among legislators. There's a lot of sentiment in Montpelier to do something about the skyrocketing tax rates, to change the formulas and things. There are a lot of new faces in the House there to achieve exactly that. And I don't think we have any reason to believe that some version of this isn't going to move forward. So I guess we'll all I'll continue to watch it until we have reason, as long as we have reason to watch it. Anything else to say on this one, team? I think we could probably talk about it all night.
I guess just one last question. Any other tidbits from Charlie Kimball? I mean, I know he's
yeah, I mean,
fairly supportive of.
Is Barnard isn't Charlie's? Is it?
No.
Okay, well, I mean, I was gonna say you can talk to him directly, but yeah, I mean, he's Charlie's great, right? Like, he's very focused on, okay, what do I need to take to be a part of these conversations? He sits on Ways and Means. He's very active in all of this, and he's saying things like, what do we do about school choice, right? Because right now the prevailing kind of sentiment is that there will be universal school choice in the state, right? So we'll build, I don't know, in the next 10 years, 3 to 5 brilliant regional high schools in each district that nobody has to go to, right? So anyway, yeah, hey Karen. So other considerations, I don't know. He's really just kind of focused on the details of what needs to change in the current system, right? One thing we did talk about, this was my observation that others seem to agree with, was that it doesn't seem likely that under a regional model that we would have one of these regional high schools be on the same site as our current school building in Woodstock. I mean, we're space constrained. We can't do 2,000 kids or 1,500 kids or whatever it is that they're looking to do here. It's not enough parking on the site, right? So we need to see a different location, and at that point, depending on where they draw the lines for a new, kind of catchment area for that school. I don't know. It's very likely that Woodstock would see the building at all, but I don't know. Sorry, Anna, did you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to, for the minutes, just confirm that the bond for new build is still not part of the budgeting legislature, i.e. we cannot put aside money at this point without it affecting our education costs.
Correct. If you tried to pass a bond now, it would all be in penalty phase. So, you're past $100 million bond, it's, a $200 million impact to your tax rate.
But Charlie did say they have legislature written that they plan to move forward on around facility building that's based on the Rhode Island model.
Right. Yeah, he did talk about that the what's it called? The Task Force on School Construction Aid has put forward, is working to put forward something that would, consistent with where we started the conversation, the governor kind of dictating these changes and saying, where school buildings should go. That's the hard work that I was referring to. Then, if you had the task force coming through and saying, okay, we have these new districts, here are the locations based on, current enrollment data, and, then coming up with the funding for it. But, who owns that debt at that point, right? I mean, the suggestion I made was to make all, school construction costs categorical aid, like special ed, that's shared by the entire tax base of the state, that no individual district would see a spike in their taxes as a result of building a school building, particularly now where local communities are losing the ability to decide to build one.
And if they go with the Rhode Island model type of plan for new buildings, then that's the way it would be.
Right, that's what they do. But we'll see what all shakes out. I don't know. There's probably a lot more that got said, but I don't know how kosher it is to tell those tales out of school.
And really, the next 6 weeks are critical because if anything's going to carry over, it has to be passed over in mid-March. So the next 6 weeks, I may be spending a lot more time in Montpelier, and I've offered to do that. So.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we move to the next agenda item, which is kind of a review of the budget. And by review, I think it's kind of just a check into where we are in the process. And that is, our last board meeting, the board passed a budget, right? And, to take to the taxpayers, I don't think that all these developments, all this turbulence around state education funding helps, at the polls in March. I guess we'll see how people react to it. But when people get nervous, they only have one button to push. And so they just vote no on school budgets, right? Which is unfortunate. But we'll see. And I guess what I wanted to just have in the minutes, if we can capture it, is the fact that, we put a good faith budget out there, and we'll get a response, or we'll get some developments out of Montpelier on kind of things that will affect the tax rate between now and March. And if, it looks like we're going to be seeing a very different tax rate than the ones that we projected, at the last board meeting, we as a board can tell our voters to vote no. We didn't have an opportunity to have all the information. But, or if it gets voted down, then we'll have to come back together as a board and make some decisions about, where we want the budget to go and try again. Right?
Yeah, we've posted positions we know we need to fill in order to meet the needs of kiddos. And then we're also posting other positions as anticipated, because until we have a passed budget, we really can't hire new people. So.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's an answer to this question, but how do you hire someone right now under the assumption that, in 2 years, our district could dissolve and, we may not need. I keep thinking of, our food program and how farm to table that is, and how that's going to be lost to a larger, cheaper food product if we end up in larger districts, or I don't know, maybe the legislature will write some more detailed aspects that will allow some more local control around stuff like that.
Hard to say, but if you're a teacher and you're trying to decide between, one of our schools and something across the river, New Hampshire, that would seem a little more secure at this point in time. I also wanted to kind of open it up to any discussion of, the overall budget process, just kind of a reflection, right? It was a lot of work that went into it. We talked about it at several meetings. I don't know if there's appetite tonight to do any kind of postmortem on that, especially since nothing's dead or at this point. But I guess, Corinne, go ahead.
Yeah. One thing that I would have been thinking about, maybe it's something that I just talked with Carrie briefly about this. But it felt like at the end everything was kind of rushed, right? This decision making was rushed. I mean, it kind of had to be, but I feel like the way the board made its decisions was within a context of some confusion or differing thoughts about what it was that we were deciding. And I wondered if it might be helpful for the board to, so just to be a little more explicit, normally what we're doing as a board is passing a number, to put on the ballot to be approved. And that's based upon an overview of a budget and priorities and whatnot. This year, obviously, we got a little more specific in terms of, what as a board we said we were supporting that was different from the first draft of the budget that came back in response to, feedback we'd heard, mainly around UA. But that discussion, that all happened very fast. And I think that, there were a lot of us who wanted to possibly support a budget number that went over the threshold, but where there was still flexibility for the for the leadership to play with that as they thought appropriate to priorities in the different buildings. And I don't know if there could be time for us as a board to say something formally, as decisions are made over the next few months and into the spring around programming and staffing, to sort of give some sort of flexibility back, or a sense of flexibility, so that, leadership can feel like they can be creative with staffing, and optimize it across the buildings.
Corinne, I guess where can you give me an example of where you see that flexibility being exercised?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure exactly how this would play out necessarily, but so, and maybe it wouldn't. But so there's, even if we're just talking specifically about UA, right? There's a difference between saying, as a board, we support the unified arts sort of experience, the student experience, to be comparable to what it has been in the past, such that, they're generally still getting, the amount of UA that they've had, um, versus saying we want there to be, or we're requiring that there be, the exact number of FTEs uh, um, that there are now. I mean, I think that those potentially could be different things based on the fact that, like, different teachers spread their time across buildings. So I don't know. I mean, I'm saying this in a not knowing the details, but I know that when you're looking at, you know, classroom schedules, teacher schedules, school buildings, calendars, staffs moving around, from what you guys have said, there's a lot of flexibility that can be leveraged to fill needs. And I just hope that the leadership wouldn't feel constrained at, I don't know. I want them to feel as little constraint as as possible.
Can I respond? There's no way we're going near UA now. There's no, I mean, the principals made the recommendation. It took a lot of energy and time and consideration. And after the pushback from community and the response of the board, you will not see a principal going near UA. The only thing that I anticipated and I spoke to the union about is if we post a position that's not filled, the principals will make a recommendation in terms of schedule, and that'll begin May 1st. So that when elementary teachers leave, they'll know what the expectations are. We can't not post those positions because that would be a rift beyond the piece. So principals are not going near UA. They're not willing to put
Prime
themselves out
example,
there.
what Corinne was talking about is the Latin position that's been restored through the board action to a full FTE. Regardless of what happened with the UA, it's not a full FTE worth of work. We're going to be reducing it anyways. Now we can't.
Right.
So now we have to have that full, instead of a 0.6 or 0.8, which would make a lot more sense in the curriculum structure of the high school.
Right. So Aaron is planning to assign her to other work, which will be fine for next year. But so she will be teaching other sections. But if what comes to pass with the budget, she doesn't have a plan for the year after.
Right.
So that's the long term. Beyond, well, not long term. That's the next budget we start working on.
In May.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, I haven't had a lot of activity from community members who, kind of reach out to me about school board matters. But what I have heard from people is we're in penalty phase, right? And then, standard things that, whatever, some of the things we've considered as a board, like different cuts, people like proposing those things. Did you consider this? Did you consider that? Like, this is unacceptable if we're in penalty phase. Anna?
For what it's worth, I want to bring this idea of the flexibility that we've been able to employ that leadership has done so fantastically with to meet budget needs would be lost if we had large districts. This ability to share teachers across schools, I just don't see that happening. That fluidity that has been so notable in our creative budgets, which is, I don't know if that's a point that someone can bring to legislators or whatnot, but thanks.
Yeah, so I guess we're kind of in a we'll see mode. And like, that's probably a good segue to the last substantive item I have on the agenda tonight, which is board finance committee composition, for the next board really, which begins at our school board meeting in March is the reorganization meeting. As I said, will not be on the board at that time, will not be the co-chair of the board or the vice chair of the board, will not be chair of the finance committee. I've talked to a couple other members of the board who will be continuing on and, kind of tested interest in, being on finance, potentially chairing the committee. So I can say there is some interest out there among other board members, but we'll have to see where it goes. But I would encourage Anna, Corinne, you guys to stay on finance if you're interested. But it's going to be, it'll be wild getting through. Hopefully we passed the budget on our first try. The community members who showed up in droves to talk about how we can't touch unified arts will show up in the same numbers at the polls and encourage others to do the same. That was kind of the board's strategy, or at least my thinking when I voted to back away from the cuts to unified arts. We're looking for kind of friends to pass the budget. Anyway, I guess we'll see in the next finance committee. We'll have to.
So who will present the budget at the
February meeting?
Yeah.
I'll still be on the board.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And I have to thank you, Ben. I've survived many a board, and I think the finance committee is in the best shape it's ever been. The quality of the dialogue of the three of you, the kinds of conversation, the level of involvement is really, we're benefiting from that. Jim and I, the district community are, that you and Carrie were able to meet with principals and really hear them and support their work. But thank you. You've laid huge foundational processes, structures, philosophy that is greatly appreciated by this individual.
Yeah, sure. It's all about the what if scenarios worksheet right there.
It is.
There's a lot more there. There's a lot more there.
And the big lift I see for this committee next year is your new strategic plan requires us to develop a financial strategic plan. And I'm starting on that path, and I will be looking for your input and guidance as we go forward.
Yeah, I don't know where you look for models for that. You had a capital plan, that's a thing. Financial strategic.
I found a couple from
They're good.
GFOA, which is the Government Finance Officers Association. No affiliation with schools, but they do it at the municipal side.
Huh.
And I can adopt one of theirs pretty simply to ours, and there's some strategies and really our strategic plan. As I looked at the model that I'm kind of heading towards, by accident, we did a lot of the steps in it.
Oh, awesome.
So we did okay by accident, but we're going to actually memorialize it into a plan. And the financial strategic plan looks at several things. First is how do you support in a sustainable manner any new educational initiative brought through the strategic plan. And the other is just long-term sustainability and stability of the tax rate of the buildings and of all the other things. And so there's several forks of it, but the big purpose of it is to support the educational programs in the strategic plan.
Cool.
So
it's exciting work.
Yeah, if we have a district.
Right.
Well, we'll get it done, and then we'll pass it on to Zoe so that as Jennifer,
I'm
from she can do
stuff
it.
to Zoe.
Right.
She's got a lot of freebies.
Yeah, so good luck to those who are continuing on. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Any
for everything that you've given.
Appreciate
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I don't know if this isn't the full audience that should hear this, but you really have been the rock foundation of this finance committee, both as we work in a small group, but also everything that's been developed and presented and advocated and everything to our staff, to our district leaders, to our public. I know you've had a couple of run-ins with the public and handled yourself magnificently, and I can't tell you how impressed I am with everything that you've done. Whether you see it as a success or not, everything that you've done has been absolutely flawless. And I really appreciate all the effort you've put into this. So thank you.
Thank you. Wow.